Yeah, sure. Is it? But have I to press a button on this?
No, don't press anything. It should. As long as oh no, it's on now. Okay.
Right.
Can okay, it's delayed a little bit, but it sounds fine. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. We're all good. Yeah.
Okay.
Cheers. Okay.
Are we going to go
Yeah, it's very convenient. The order in which he sat down. Okay. Are you? Is it all sorted from your side then?
Yes, I think we're all.
Okay. Right. So hopefully everyone's getting settled in. There's 2 more seats up the front. If anyone's stuck standing up. Before we get going, obviously thanks everybody very much for coming, and just a few little housekeeping things. Hannah, in the sort of green shirt, is going to take some photos of the audience just to promote our event on social media and stuff. If anyone has objections to that, doesn't want to be in photos, just talk to her afterwards, and we'll make sure not to use any with you in. And yeah. So thanks everybody for coming to the meeting. So the whole idea basically is in Transgress, we've been our latest campaign. What we've been trying to do is to get our point across and have some influence on the process for developing a new model of care. So this is supposed to be sort of a HSC, Department of Health, like review of the state of trans healthcare currently, and developing a new pathway. But basically, because the NGS clinicians are, like the National Gender Service, doctors are involved in that process, it means that a lot of people in the community have felt that like unsafe to participate, or like that there would be really a lot of negative consequences. So we're kind of having to come at it from a campaigning point of view instead of like individual submissions and stuff like that. So the people we've got, I'm sure you recognise the faces, but the people we've got speaking at the meeting tonight is Dara Dempsey from Tenny, Lottie, who's a member of Transgress, and then Jenny McGuire, who is, of course, world famous. But
noted transsexual.
Yeah. But so, yeah, the whole purpose basically is to get everyone up to speed on what is actually happening, and then discuss what we can do about it. So first off, Dara, if you want to kick us off and fill us in, and you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, I will do all of that. Can you all hear me okay? Like this? Okay, and hopefully also on the live stream. Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here and for coming into the beautiful outhouse basement for Pride Month. Yay. So my name is Dara. My pronouns are they, them. I am the executive director at TENI, the Transgender Equality Network Ireland, which is the national trans org. And I guess, I can talk a little bit about the work that kind of we're doing around the National Clinical Programme. And I think we're going to have time for Q&A and stuff at the end. So I will share what I think is most useful or relevant, but obviously feel free to come with questions. And I suppose just to give a little bit of context around TENI and the kind of where we're coming from within the healthcare space, outside of the National Clinical Programme and in advance of the National Clinical Programme. So we've been involved in the kind of shared joint campaigns and goals around depathologizing trans healthcare for years. We've been also one of the voices campaigning for trans healthcare that is accessible, that is safe, for us to access, that is available regionally and locally, that you don't have to come to Dublin for, that is available for free in the public system, and crucially that is available outside of a psychiatric model, so that you don't have to go through mandatory psychiatric assessments, which obviously, as we know, you currently do within the public system. And we've been working with trans grassroots groups as much as we can, and also with other NGOs. So like NGO kind of partners, I guess, within this space, really crucially, belong to the LGBT Youth Service, and also LGBT Ireland. And all three of our organisations sit on the National Clinical Programme Working Group. So I suppose there is a kind of a very clear shared like vision for what we want from trans healthcare across at least those three organisations, which is something that I feel quite proud of, because very challenging to do, to develop a shared goal and vision. So that's been a really kind of important piece of work that was happening in the background in the years kind of running up to the National Clinical Programme developing. I meant to bring some copies, but I didn't. But Belong To did a really interesting piece of research that was published in 2024 called the Trans Healthcare in Ireland report. They were looking at mapping trans young people's attempts to access trans healthcare in Ireland, and where they were going and where they were being referred to and where those referrals were leading, if anywhere, and the answer was mostly nowhere. But kind of through that project, they also engaged with like us and a bunch of other trans and LGBT organisations to develop a shared kind of vision for what we wanted for trans healthcare, and that's published in the back of that report. And if it's useful, or if you are like me, also a visual person, it's mapped out there, and it's on the Belong To website, and I would recommend having a look at it if you want to. And so that's kind of, yeah, just a little bit around where Tenny's kind of stance is on healthcare and what it is that we're looking for from healthcare. And the National Clinical Programme, as you will all know, was established to develop a new model of care for trans healthcare in Ireland, or like more realistically, to develop the first model of care for trans healthcare in Ireland. Because again, as I'm sure many of you will know, there is one public service, the National Gender Service, that is the one kind of public clinic that has its model of care that it kind of uses for itself, but it's not by any means a national service. By dint of being the only service, it's called a national service, but obviously it's not kind of reaching everybody that needs trans healthcare by any means. So the ongoing kind of escalating crisis, as we all know it, in trans healthcare has led to the commitment from the HSE, from the Department of Health, to develop the National Clinical Programme. So the National Clinical Programme is tasked with developing the model of care. The model of care is a model of care is a document that sets out how a particular type of healthcare should be delivered in Ireland. So there are other models of care documents, like there's one for ADHD. There's tons of them, and it kind of sets out how this type of healthcare should be delivered in Ireland, and that's what the programme is working on. I'm trying to sort out my thoughts in the order in which it's useful to say all of this, but I suppose just to say that the National Clinical Programme is tasked with developing the model of care, and there is a timeline, which I'll come to in a second, around when that needs to be done by. When the model of care is published, there is then a second job, if it is something that we like and that we want to implement, there is then a second job to get that funded. So there is currently no funding allocated to implementing the model of care when it's published. And I suppose that's just something that I think is important to say, that this process exists to develop the document. We have to develop the document and see what's going to come out of that, and then there will be a process to get it actually implemented. So yeah, I suppose just to kind of be clear about that. And the model of care there's a couple of different kind of stages to the model of care development. So it is being developed by the working group. There's a lot of fun jargon and stuff that I'm going to try and keep to a minimum, but there's working groups and advisor groups and steering whatevers and all that kind of stuff. So please bear with me if I'm being really obtuse about it. I'm not trying to be. But the work of the document is being developed by the working group. So the working group includes Tenny, for instance, members of the other kind of like belong to LGBT Ireland, other grassroots groups, and also clinicians. So as you rightly mentioned, there are clinicians from the National Gender Service, but there's also other clinicians from other areas of healthcare in Ireland. And that's the group that is like developing the actual document. The working group or the document is kind of overseen then by what's called a clinical advisory group, which is a group of only clinicians that oversees the work, oversees the document, provides advice kind of as needed, I guess. And then when the document is finished, it goes up kind of to more senior HSE leadership, up into the HSE clinical cabinet, they call it, for more senior HSE kind of review of it, and they might make changes within that space. But also within that space, there is then going to be a public consultation on the document as well, and that is standard across all models of care that they go out for public consultation at some point, kind of after they've gone through all these layers of development and review. Then it goes out to the public, and then theoretically it gets approved. So I suppose just to be clear that that's kind of, there's a couple of different kind of groups or a couple of different like phases, obviously, that the document is going to go through, and we're involved at the working group. And then after that, it's kind of only clinical HSE review, and then there'll obviously be the public piece. I can get into any more detail on any of that as people want. And then, so the work of the working group, so the actual work of developing the model of care is supported by two different kind of strands of work, I guess. So there's what they call the evidence-based review and the experience-based review. So the evidence-based is a review of the literature and the research into gender-affirming healthcare and kind of what the needs are, what the outcomes are, what happens. And that was, there's two kind of papers being developed through that. That was a piece where they, for instance, for one of those papers, actually for both of those, they put out a kind of public call for submissions into that like review. So I don't know if you might have seen that. I think there was definitely some reporting on it at the time, and I think there was a little bit of misunderstanding on it at the time, that there was a call for like submissions for like, what kind of papers do you think we should be including, or what data do you think should be included in this? It was not a call for engagement more broadly, which I'm going to come to in a second, but just in case you saw that and there was some confusion about it at the time, I think that's what that was. It was to feed into the kind of review of the existing literature and research into trans healthcare. And so that's going to inform, I guess, kind of from the research, from the kind of scientific-y sort of side, what is happening within trans healthcare, what are the outcomes, what are the needs, what's happening in other areas. And that kind of like the criteria for that was papers that were published in the last 50 years in English. So it's not just Ireland, it's all over the world. And then the other kind of strand is the experience-based piece. So that is how we, the trans community, and also healthcare providers will feed in about their experiences of trans healthcare into the model of care. So there will be a piece of engagement with the trans community, and also with parents of trans young people, and then also with healthcare providers around what are people's experiences of the current healthcare system in Ireland, what do people want from future healthcare. Like, that's where the community voice is going to come in. So I think that's kind of where the confusion was around the call for submissions into the evidence review. I think there was some worry, certainly I heard some worries at the time that that was the window with which to engage. So just to say that experience piece is, the community piece is in development at the moment. It hasn't happened yet. It will be happening soon. So there will be the opportunity to engage and to feed in with what your experiences have been and what you would like to see. Obviously, we are we want everybody to engage in as much as they want to. And then, so those two things are going to come kind of feed into the model of care development. And then the working group is going to use those, plus other pieces of data, other pieces of expertise that we pulled together to develop the model of care document itself. And just kind of on the timelines, I guess the model of care document is due to be completed by the end of this year. So that's kind of where we're at with it at the moment. It was initially due to be completed earlier, like in Q3 of this year, and it's been pushed out to the end of the year because it has, I guess, because it takes time. Yeah. Does that make any sense so far?
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. That is my kind of overview of where we're at with it, I guess. I'm conscious there's probably a million of questions, but I also don't want to. I want to hand over to our next speakers, if that's chill. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah. Unless you like briefly want to talk about like what you're feeling, like are you optimistic, pessimistic, like what's the vibe?
What's the vibe?
I mean, you don't have to, but just it.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to. I guess the vibe it depends on the day. To be totally honest with you, it depends on the day, and how I'm feeling about it. I guess. I mean, I suppose my baseline is that I'm a glass half full kind of person at all times, or like I'm the kind of person who believes that the glass always has the potential to be half full, even if it's not currently. I wouldn't be.
At the bottom of the
and I'm like, it's going to get there.
leave her.
She's working. She's doing her best. But I guess just kind of like broadly, like I wouldn't be engaged in any of the work that Tenny is engaged in, but particularly in this work, if I didn't think that there was something good to come out of it, or at least an improvement to come out of it. Do I think it's going to be the most perfect thing that everybody wants? No. Do I think that everybody wants the same thing anyway? No, also. So I am definitely feeling like there's a lot. It's hard for me to say how I'm feeling about it, because there's a lot to do. Like there's a lot for us to kind of work out. I think that there's so much potential and so much opportunity to get something really good that for me there's no point in not engaging with it. It is the only and the best opportunity we've had in this space in the last 10 years. So TBD, I guess. And it depends how I'm feeling. Yeah, the vibes. The vibes vary. The glass empties and fills day by day. But I suppose what kind of, just to say that I do, just that piece that is really important for me is like that it is the opportunity currently. There will be future and different opportunities after this is published. There will be future and different opportunities, in 2 and 5 and 10 years down the line. But right now, this is the space that we are able to engage in, and that we're able to engage our organizations differently in and around. And I would love to maybe have some conversations around that also. And I wouldn't be engaging in it if I didn't think that there was a point.
Sure. Come back to you. Cool. Next to Lottie.
Hi, I'm Lottie. I'm an activist with Transgress. Thanks very much, Dara. That was really enlightening. So I'm up here just to talk to you a little bit about the open letter we've got at the minute, what we hope to achieve with that, with our demands, and how you can help us with that. If you haven't signed it already, please do. There's a few QR codes dotted around the room, and the link to it is in our Instagram bio. So we wrote the open letter because we know already that collective action on trans healthcare works. Part of the reason that the Department of Health and the HSE are even discussing this new model of care is because campaigning pressure has led them there. So if that's the case, if we manage to get them around the table to discuss this, why the hell wouldn't we get together again and try to get them to come out with the best outcomes for our community's healthcare from this process? There is no point to a new model of care if it is not based on the principle of GP-led informed consent. There is no point in having NGS clinicians involved in the new model of care's development because they don't have our best interests at heart. There's no point in having religious institutions administering our care at a high level because, again, not our best interests at heart. And there's also no point in not issuing interim guidance to GPs on how to deal with trans healthcare because this development of the new model of care seems to be taking as slow as bloody Christmas. No offence, Dara.
I feel you.
And we need healthcare now. So Our letter has 4 key demands, and the first demand really is GP-led informed consent for trans healthcare in Ireland. There is no point in any model of care that is not based on that principle. The current model of care we have, and the model of care we look likely to potentially move towards under the current consultation, is totally unacceptable to us. Irish trans healthcare has been ranked consistently the worst out of the 27 EU countries. If you want to access trans healthcare in Ireland, you either have to use like expensive telehealth or DIY or go through the NGS. And the problems with the NGS are kind of twofold. I mean, besides the more important issue, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, there's obviously the practicality with it as well. It creates this really ludicrous bottleneck. I mean, I know we're a small community, but sending us all to one clinic in Dublin, and then they wonder why there's an 18-year waiting list with 2,500 people on it, that's absolutely ludicrous. Now, even if you were to patiently wait to get to the top of that waiting list, like, that place is hard to get to from other parts of Dublin. Imagine trying to get there from, like, Ballyshannon or Uachtarard or Youghal. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, the more important issue with it is also being trans is not a psychiatric condition. It's totally inappropriate the way they are assessing us for gender-affirming care. It is internationally agreed that this does not need to be done anymore. The WPATH guidelines, Standards of Care 8, released in 2022, argued that trans healthcare should be depathologized. And this is based on the World Health Organization moving gender incongruence in 2019 from mental health and behavioral disorders to their chapter on sexual health. So why then are we still being asked inappropriate questions and being put on the spot to access care that, frankly, a lot of cis people just walk into their GP and get without many questions asked? It's totally ridiculous. The international bodies that decide the definitions of our care and the recommendations for our care agree with us that what the NGS is putting on the table is not for us. It is totally unacceptable for this to continue. So we are demanding that the new model of care should be based on GP-led informed consent. No more, no less. Now, secondly, we're also demanding that the NGS staff themselves are not involved in the development of the new model of care. It's generally a good rule in life to not ask the problem what to do about the problem. The problem doesn't want to solve the problem, because then the problem would have nothing to do. There is a serious lack of trust between our community and these clinicians. Like, I'm sure many people across this room already have horror stories of dealing with them, and you can go onto our Instagram and see reels of the way they talk to their patients. It's absolutely egregious. It's ridiculous. They have in the past been known to try and withhold care to people who speak out against them publicly. They've advised GPs not to do blood tests first. They've advised not to enter into shared care arrangements with telehealth services. Those are things that put our lives and health at risk. Moreover, they're known to just throw their toys out the pram and close the waiting list, cutting us off from the only limited healthcare option there is through the state in Ireland for trans healthcare. It's really, that's strong evidence that shows that even though they profess to care for us, at the end of the day, they are willing to risk our lives and our health just to maintain control over our bodily autonomy. Now, even the specific NGS clinicians themselves ideologically seem opposed to us having any sort of bodily autonomy or choices over our care. Writing in the opinion section of the Irish Times in January 2022, Dr. Carl Neff, who some of you may be familiar with already, wrote that we need it is vital that we need a psychosocial assessment of our care before accessing gender-affirming care. And even he admitted that that is, you know, for cases where people may regret it, and that is rare. Paul Moran, late last year on RTE Primetime, argued that we do need to be asked those difficult questions before accessing care, because he mischaracterised a lot of it as irreversible. Now, these are the guys who the state is entrusting to deliver the current model of care and entrusting to contribute to the future model of care. And that is totally inappropriate, and we demand that they are no longer part of that working group. Now, in much the same vein, we also demand that there is no involvement of religious groups in trans healthcare. Now, the NGS itself is a collaboration between the HSE and St. John of God's Mental Health Services. St. John of God's Mental Health Services are an international order that has administers healthcare on several different continents. In Ireland specifically, they have been involved in the misuse of public funds and the mistreatment of patients in the past. Our problem with them being involved in trans healthcare is not specifically the order itself. It is the entire concept of a religious order still having sway over our healthcare decisions. On the website of that order and any other religious order you look at, they may profess to act compassionately and care and all that sort of stuff, but underneath that is still the Catholic ethos. And that's the ethos that, you know, has left a very dark stain on this country's history. That's the same ethos that continues to restrict access to abortion care for women, has completely restricted access in the past, has caused deaths through restricting access. It has separated mothers from their children in homes like Besborough and Tuam. It has maligned our community and restricted our access to healthcare in the past. It is completely inappropriate that religious orders still have a role in our healthcare, and even if it's only administrative, we insist that that ends. Now, last but not least, we are also asking for interim guidance given to GPs so that our healthcare can continue whilst this process goes on with the development of the new model of care. In 2021, the Irish College of General Practitioners did issue a form of guidance to GPs that basically amounted to refer us all to specialist services. So it's not very helpful. So besides the NGS, if you are DIYing in this country or using telehealth services, at some point you are still going to need to use a GP for either blood tests or a shared care arrangement or something. It's completely impractical to do this without a GP involved at all. So we can't be asked to put our lives and health and happiness on hold whilst we wait for the HSE to come up with a new model of care or wait to get to the top of the NGS's waiting list. This solution is very simple. This interim guidance would only need to include 3 things basically. Enter shared care arrangements with the telehealth providers that many trans people rely on for healthcare in Ireland. Actually do blood tests for trans people so that we can safely take HRT. And also prescribe us HRT. All of these things are things they already do for cis people. They already take blood tests for all sorts of things. They already prescribe HRT for stuff like menopause. And honestly, with regards to shared care with private companies and stuff like that, your GP wouldn't ghost you if you had a knee op at a private clinic. Why the hell are they not seeing us just because we have gotten hormones through telehealth services like Gender GP or something? So it's really, we insist that until this new model of care drops, we need some interim guidance for GPs so that we can continue our healthcare. So that really is our 4 demands that we have from this process. This letter is addressed to Jennifer Carroll McNeill, the current Minister for Health, her colleague Mary Butler, the Minister of State for Health, Colm Henry, who is the clinical lead of the HSC, and
Bernard Gloucester,
the CEO of the HSC. Former CEO. We better update that. This isn't just going to be a letter that they will get in their inbox and that they can ignore. We are going to, when this letter is ready and you've all signed it and all your families have signed it and everyone at your workplace has signed it, in your union has signed it, and in your Discord server has signed it, we are going to turn up at their workplace with such numbers and such fanfare that they cannot ignore us. We can't do this alone. So please sign the letter and join us. Come to our meetings, take part in our actions. Peace, guys.
Just so everyone's aware, there's leaflets on a table on the back of the room, and that has the QR code and all the details for, to sign the open letter if you haven't already gone to the Instagram or signed the clipboard or done all the other various things. For last but not least, we have Jenny.
And I just want to say that was absolutely fantastic, and how you remembered even one name is beyond me. That was absolutely amazing. Thank you for that, and I learned so much from it. Last year, my name is Jenny. I am co-organizer of Trans and Intersex Pride Dublin, and I'm always giving out. Last year, Trans and Intersex Pride Dublin saw its biggest numbers in its history. We saw 10,000 people take to the streets of Dublin on the hottest day of the year, and we all collectively melted together as one bloc that was demanding trans liberation and liberation for all. That was historic. It was momentous. Anyone that was there, I'm sure, could tell you the overwhelming surge that I know I felt being there. But then someone said to me afterwards, okay, but where's the power in it? We saw one of the biggest mobilizations for trans rights in the history of this country and on this island. And what power do we have? I went to the next National Gender Service as someone who is one of the good lucky ones. I got through. I'm with the National Gender Service still, despite what everyone here tells me to do. And for my own sins. And the first one after that protest, I went in, and I hadn't even sat down before someone was over to me. A nurse came over to me and knew who I was and said my name to me. And it was straight away, Jenny, it's so good to see you. I always see you talking. And I interrupted and said, about yous? And other things. I hadn't even sat down, and so I'm sat there. It's after taking me 2.5 hours on the bus to get down to Loughlinstown, and I sit there. I'm on edge straight away. I feel like I'm being watched. When I see one of the lead clinicians walk through, he is watching me. He's staring right at me. I catch his eye, and I smile, and I turn back and watch the television, and this is the public health care that I'm accessing and that I am the good one for. I went through and I told the story of the ages. Thank God I did theatre growing up. And like I went in and I told them the perfect story that they wanted to hear, and like I'm supported by my family and I have stable housing with my family and I have this, that and the other that make me their ideal candidate. And I go into that office still so afraid because I have spoken out and because I am involved in organising against them, but more I'm involved in organising for my community and for the interests of my community that they are meant to be serving. 1 second. I actually feel a bit emotional. I'm so grateful for the work that Transgress the NGS does, and I'm so grateful for the work that you are doing in the working group. But I I think that it isn't just a nicety of, you know, we're engaging with processes, and I think we should. I think we also, it is that's Dara's job, and whereas it also is our responsibility and our duty to be the angry people in the room outside. It is our responsibility to say exactly where this stands, because we're I went from a trans intersex pride with 10,000 people to a journalist a couple of weeks later trying to ask me it very seriously, for a well-established organization, asking me, but do you not understand that some women would feel uncomfortable with you in the bathroom? We do not have power. We are being denied power and being denied sway and a say over our own bodies and our own futures, our own ability to believe in a future for all of us. And that is why it is our job to make our own power. It is what we have always done. It is what we've done in our small numbers, whether it's in San Francisco in 1965, whether it's in the founding of the Hirschfeld Center here in Dublin, whether it is the work that is whether it's Pride 1992 when people were stripping off in the street in Dublin. Like, we have found pockets of power, and we are up against a fight that is one of our biggest. We are up against. We are not just fighting a debate, which is often what it's being taken as. We are fighting against institutions designed to keep us down. We are up against billionaires, and we're up against right-wing lobby groups who are making money, and we're up against journalists who are making money on our suffering and our clicks and us being ostracized. And that is why it is not a if or a should. It is a must that we get more organized and that we are more powerful and we are outright. I'm looking at Trans Pride this year, and we're doing Trans Intersex Pride this year, and we're doing a lot of organizing and we're doing a lot of work. But that's in my head the whole time. I don't think we're there yet, but I think we all, if we have more people and if we have people together who are willing to put ourselves out the line, because it is not a neutral position to leave trans people on waiting lists. It is not a neutral position of the status quo and the upholding of the status quo, because we are the one that suffers and they don't care. If they did, they would do something about it. But that is not the case. You can say all you want, but and I say this to those with real power. I say those who actually could make a change, but have decided that it is not of political value, and that our lives are not of political value. And so we must become unavoidable. We must be in every single area. We must be organized, and there's only so many of us. We must reach out across groups. We must come together, and we have to think about what is our function of pride. What are we proud about? Because I'm sick of walking into bathrooms and I'm afraid to say a word, and I'm afraid because I feel that I am being policed, that I cannot be there, and I am a public-facing transsexual who is out and proud, and I'm this, that, and the other. And I'm so afraid that someone is going to turn around and take advantage of the situation of me just trying to use the bathroom, and this could happen to absolutely anyone, because we are fighting a war on their terms. We must take it back to our terms and what we need as a community, and that is the healthcare that we deserve, that we are entitled to, and that is the rights and futures that we and those that come after us, long after us, because I hope to see if the future is transsexual, and I will demand it and I will make it. And that is our duty to do so as those who come before us. And so I guess just to finish off on the function of pride, that we are in a struggle, and and the struggle's happening or not, but we have a say on whether we want our side to be up with a fighting chance. Saying pride is a protest doesn't make it one. Having Garda march at Pride isn't going to give us trans healthcare. Having Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael march at Dublin Pride is not going to give us anything, because my eyes and my ears tell me so, and my logic and my history knowledge tell me so. And so just to come back to what I said about, it is an act of purposeful mistreatment of our community to continue to let much needed processes go out and to leave us suffering while that happens. Now is our time to act and to lend a hand to everyone that is in the rooms, that are in our follow someone on Instagram that sees something, that are finding touches from you and from your community, that are reaching out far beyond that you can see, but you just actually have to do it. And we have to do it, and we have to be serious about it, and we have to be unafraid and unabashed, because that they are. Thank you.
Right, so we've quite a bit of time for questions, really. Obviously, I think we had 3 really powerful speakers there. And so I think all of us in the room are now thinking about, like, what do we do with this information? How can we, for example, like, can I get my organization, my union, my whatever, to like pass a resolution in favor of this open letter, like to put their names to the open letter? How can we like build like a stronger voice behind what we're all demanding? So like whatever questions people have, that you can direct them at one of the panelists, people in general. I'll take a few at a time just so that it's easier to keep track. So if people could like put their hands up and I'll call on you. Now would be the time to do that. Yourself with the triangle necklace thing.
My name is James. I'm a drag artist and quite quick. I live non-binary, and I get it. I think it makes sense, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing. And I think that we need to move forward where we are. Like, we can't just live in the past, because that's what they're doing. I'm starting a night called Music Drag. Now, the basis of the night is trans inclusivity and non-binary inclusivity, and to basically bring you guys together. I love you to come. The reason I'm here is because I want to create more of an inclusivity market. Well, not market, that's the wrong word, sorry. I'm also dyslexic.
Take your time.
So, basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring you guys together with yourselves, and I want to basically create a place where you guys can feel safe, where you're not judged going into a bathroom, where people don't really, like, I also am aware that there are certain spaces that don't, cater for everyone. I'll just say it that way, right? What I'm trying to do is cater for everyone and expand the allyship to make sure that it's not just the, it's one sector society, it's this sector society, it's this group. Because we're going to get nowhere with that. Like, I mean, we need everyone to come together in Ireland. It's not like the whole thing with Pride and how that worked out. Like, here we are, right? Like, and I really appreciate all the work that you guys are doing, and I want to know if there's anything that we can do to support you. If there's anything that like our grassroots movement, underground movement, Music Drag can do for you, please contact me. Let me know anything you want to share, anything we can do to empower you guys. And that's why I'm here, and I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for giving me this space to say that, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. Later. Is yourself?
Hi, I'm Eleanor. I'm the chair of the Translimber community, and obviously a lot of what we talked about here, a lot of the work is being done in Dublin. So I think by the time it gets down to us, it kind of does fall to, there's not a lot of other services around that are aware of like campaigns or anything like that. So I suppose to all of you, what do you think would be the best way to try and advocate or make sure that more people who are outside of Dublin are informed and know like about the open letter and other stuff? Obviously we are able to tell it within our own community, but reaching further than just the Transgender community, how do we get into them?
Yeah, excellent question. I might take 1 or 2 more before I go back to the panelists. Yeah, yourself with the glasses.
This might be a stupid question, but you know the way we talk about European guidelines around these things for healthcare and stuff? To what extent is there legal repercussions for not following those things, and is that another route that can be taken later down the line if things don't work out?
Yeah, excellent question. And maybe one more. Yeah.
So you just mentioned about the
Cool. Are you okay to go first, or do you want some time to?
I don't mind.
Yeah, sure, you can go first.
Okay, I'll try. So I think the first thing, Eleanor, on your question around getting outside of Dublin and reaching folks who are outside of Dublin, this is crucial. Here we are in Dublin. Certainly something that we do, like broadly in the work the work that we do in Tenny, and the way that we work in Tenny, but that which will inform how we're. I suppose what I'm thinking about with this is like when the National Clinical Programme kind of community consultation piece is happening, like how are we going to get that out to people, and how are we going to make sure that it gets to everyone that it needs to get to, and hopefully to nobody that it doesn't need to get to. So like for us, the network with the like local and regional community groups has always been absolutely crucial to the work that we're doing. We don't know how to reach people in Limerick, but you do, and we can figure that out together. And then there's other like like something that certainly is a gap for us that like I'm always open is like reaching particularly like older folks, particularly outside of like the networks that we have, which are mostly in Dublin, because that's where most of us are based. So there's going to be kind of a big mapping piece to happen with that when we get there. I will be talking to anybody who wants to talk to me about how we can get that piece of work out to everyone. Again, that it's relevant for and nobody else, minimal other people. So that's kind of it's that piece. It's about linking in with the groups that are there, the networks that are there, and the people that we know, kind of activists and groups that we know in each of those areas, and drawing on like our personal networks and stuff too, because as Jenny said, there's not that many trans people, and sometimes it's just about who you know as well. There was do you want me to do all of the questions?
You don't have to respond to all of them, like whatever you think.
I'll do my whole. Okay, yeah, okay. The timeline question: how realistic is the timeline? Like how long is a piece of string? I don't know. It could go on forever. It certainly could. It could go on forever. There's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of kind of factors around the timeline. A big part of the factor is that the National Clinical Programme, the Model of Care Development, was funded up until, like, the funding for it, as far as I understand it anyway, went until Q3 of this year. And so extending it out into the end of the year has been a bit of an extension of that. I have no idea internally, HSE funding-wise, what happened there. But I suppose that's one of the pieces of information that we have, is that the funding ran up until this year. But there's other kind of, like, I guess there's other considerations around that as well, which is like that the budget for next year will be decided this year. And if we don't have something, like, I suppose about trans healthcare budget, like broadly, anything that is not in that budget will not get funded into 2027. So there is a kind of a consideration around what can we ask for, what do we ask for? And I don't even mean we, the National Clinical Programme, like I mean we, Tenny, we, our organisations, what are we asking for in the budget around trans healthcare for 2027? And if it's not in there, it's not going to happen. And the work is to get it in there, obviously. We all know that trans healthcare is not a priority outside of our community. So there's kind of strategic decisions, like, and considerations around that, around how and when the asks are made, and in what kind of like arenas the asks are made.
True. And
the question about if you are not in line with the guidelines. So we unfortunately we have the answer to that, which is as Lottie said, it was yes. Like in 2019, the World Health Organization depathologized trans healthcare. So they moved the trans-related diagnoses out of psychiatry into sexual health, and which kind of had like knock-on effects in terms of like the recommendations around how those types of care are like conceptualized, and the kind of frameworks that are used around them that should, according to the World Health Organization, no longer be psychiatric. And like, Ireland has obviously not done that. So we are still using a psychiatric model in Ireland what does that mean for Ireland? Not a huge amount right now, it seems. I know that there was some pressure from the World Health Organization to move in line with that kind of guidance, that kind of best practice. There was a deadline for Ireland of, I think it was 21 maybe, to come into line, 2021, to come into line with that. My analysis of the situation is that then COVID happened and everybody forgot about all that, and the World Health Organization was busy doing COVID. So as far as I know, happy to be contradicted by anybody in the room who knows better, would be interested to know, there hasn't been any repercussions for us not doing that. They're not enforceable. There's no kind of fines. There's no kind of what's the word I'm looking for?
The WHO doesn't have an army.
Exactly. Yeah, they issue guidelines. They issue what we think. They're like, we are experts. Here's what we think. Sorry, guys. And it's up to the member, whatever the nation, to the state to decide what they're going to do about that.
Sure. I know there was a lot of questions.
Sorry.
Either of you, do you want to respond to some other questions, or?
I'd like to just respond to the question about how you can get more involved with Transgress specifically outside of Dublin. Obviously, we do have our monthly meetings. They are available online, as far as I'm aware, still. Mm-hmm, yeah. So you're more than welcome to join in those and pitch ideas and, get involved in the campaign that way. Obviously, follow us on Instagram. And we're also trying to do more outreach and events outside of Dublin. We'll be doing Cork Pride and Cork Alt Pride as well. So watch the space, but that's how you can get involved. And in terms of pushing for the open letter, we'd be really grateful if you could just push that out to your networks and whoever elsewhere in Limerick and wherever else you are. So we'd be really grateful for that. Sure.
I'm going to talk about your question about how do we make an inclusive space. And I think how we have thought about inclusivity in the past 20 years has been very much around we'll facilitate and we will do pronoun badges, or we'll do this, that, and the other, which are important and which do make people feel more comfortable. But I think people, if you want to include trans people, work with trans people is what I would say. But also, I think every opportunity you have is an opportunity to push your propaganda. It's an opportunity to go out there and say exactly what it is, no matter how nice and friendly the event is, to use the space and use the whether it's around a table in a bar doing a Kirkukora, or maybe it's doing it's multiple shows a week doing drag. That every opportunity is a space to push out that trans healthcare. What does that look like? It's, oh my god, 18-year waiting list? That is scandalous. Because it is scandalous. And you're just about knocking it in. It's about using whatever platform you have, if you want to. I think that is your best way. I'd also just like to say quickly about trans and intersex pride. Anyone can get involved in the organising of it. We're going to be marching in Dublin Pride. We have fun, exciting plans. And then we're going to then we have the march on the 11th of July at 2 p.m. in City Hall. Bring everyone and your ma, and bring your anger, but also, if you think that we're going in a wrong direction, or you think that we should be doing more, please come and tell us. But come and tell us, and let's work together, and let's get that done. And let's organize together. And if you are ever looking for permission to get involved, or, oh, I wish I was doing this, or, oh, I wish we were more radical, or I wish we were, throwing bricks, that okay, come and talk to us. Let's do it, and let's collaborate, because I am only as good as the people around me. And so, please come and be around me. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think those are all good responses. Just I have a small piece to add as well to the Eleanor from Limerick. We have leaflets down the back. Feel free to take them and leave them wherever you think people would be receptive to them in Limerick, if that, in terms of reaching beyond the people you do know. but also like feel free to like ask us for the graphics we've used and like go print the thing and do, you know, everyone is free to promote our stuff. Like, in fact, we would be really in favor of it. We have time for some more questions. Yourself first, yeah.
Probably mostly for Dara, but if either of you have opinions or whatever, about Kindred that was recently set up in Cork, how will that affect the working group? Will that kind of play a part in it? Is that something we could possibly see implemented in other places throughout the country and not just Dublin? Thoughts, opinions, vibes?
Yeah, excellent question. I'll take a few more. Can people leave their hands up so I know where to go? Yourself, the person with the glasses, and then the other person.
So I applied today to be part of the Psychological Society of Ireland's political model talking about process. I couldn't get involved earlier because the experience requirements were really weirdly high. I don't know.
It's almost like they don't want you there.
Yeah. It's hard to get into that if you're not in NGS. But the requirements for the town hall seem to be lower. So if they let me in, apart from saying we need to be way less involved in this whole thing, what propaganda would you like me to do?
Excellent question. Yourself in the brown there. Bless you.
So, stupid question. I'm not really too clued in on how review stuff is going, but as I've kind of seen what went on in England, where there's more of a general review of trans services that got hijacked by transphobic insiders with the CAS review. I know the people reviewing the trans healthcare outside of the NGS is mostly neutral, but are you able to fully confirm in any way that they are in fact neutral and they're not collaborating with the NGS to make stuff even worse and with the only output being just increasing the NGS's salaries?
Very good question. I can maybe take one more before we go back to the speakers.
Yeah, I think it's related to that question. I was just wondering, with all the rise of anti-trans in England, in the US, everywhere, sorry for being a bummer, but do you think it's going to influence what's going to happen here in this development of new model of care and everything, or do you think we're, safe?
Okay. It's going to happen. So the first question was about Kindred. So Kindred is a clinic in Cork that is a trans-led, like trans healthcare clinic that is based in the Sexual Health Centre in Cork. It is a pilot that was conceived by Trans Healthcare Action and is run by them alongside the Sexual Health Centre in Cork. And it's great. It's doing amazing work so far. Well, I guess I don't know if it's doing amazing work. It's an amazing idea that I have every reason to believe will do amazing work. And I think it shows such a wonderful imagination and innovation in looking at this big thorny problem, or a big problem that looks really thorny, trans healthcare, and saying, well, why don't we? Here's something we can do. Like the Sexual Health Centre in Cork saying, well, we have trans people coming to our service. They are looking for very normal types of healthcare that are being provided, that are well kind of within the scope of like normal GP practice, nurses practices, and our remit as a Sexual Health Centre. How can we start to provide that? And it's not, as it turns out, all that complex to do, and a grassroots group can do it with a very small amount of funding and a service that is supportive. So if anyone is interested in, it's all online. I would recommend to go have a look at it. They're doing amazing work in Kindred in Cork. If you know anybody who should be linked into it in Cork, tell them about it. And how do I think, the question was, how do I think that this might kind of, how does this sit within the National Clinical Programme, I guess? It sits in terms of being another piece of information in the landscape of trans healthcare. One of the things that happens all the time in talking about trans healthcare is the kind of collapsing into only talking about the National Gender Service. Because it's like the public service, and because I think people should be able to access public healthcare. But this kind of collapsing into talking about the National Gender Service, it's the only service, it's the only one that we're talking about, as opposed to what we all in this room know, which is that the majority of people, of trans people, are not accessing healthcare through the National Gender Service. The majority of trans people are accessing trans healthcare either through private providers or through DIYing, as opposed to through the National Gender Service. But because they're the only public provider, they get all that space. So I think it's even just in that way, even just in terms of like being another kind of like data point, almost like another kind of example, another like place where people are accessing healthcare, and another way, like another way of saying this is a way that this can be done. Sorry, that sentence really left my brain. Yeah. So that's really useful, and it disrupts the National Clinical Programme. I think it disrupts what we know about trans healthcare. It kind of is a way of changing the landscape and therefore changing the conversation. So I think it's great. Yeah, does that answer that a little bit? Yes, go check out Kindred if you haven't already. Great. And then the question was about the Psychological Society of Ireland, that you're going to the town hall thing. If they let you in. They should let you in. Yeah. Yeah. So the for context, the so like there's a couple of different healthcare provider professions that are having like town hall, that have had meetings with people within their profession. So like, for instance, psychology for the Psychological Society of Ireland, and then they're coming together in like a town hall meeting. And they're, yeah, so I'm really glad you're going. That's really excellent. What about it? I guess just like go and tell them what you know or what you believe or what you think. Yeah, I know that the threshold for engagement was pretty high, not necessarily maybe high. So my understanding is that it's lower for the town hall because they're learning from that. But yeah, like I think go, and like what's really valuable for us in this space, like by us I mean like me, I guess, like as a trans voice in this space, is to have the kind of voices from the like clinical, professional, medical side of the table, as it were, saying this is what we should be doing in trans healthcare, and that trans people should be able to access healthcare in an informed consent manner, in a way that is, you know, affirming and safe and like holistic and good for them, because they're used to hearing that from me, and it can get a little diluted, I guess, or watered down. And it's like, well, of course that's what Tenny's going to say, of course that's what Transgress is going to say, but when a lot of the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the resistance has been coming from within kind of professional bodies and professional fields, having that voices within that space saying we should be doing this in a way that makes sense for people, that people are able to access care that is affirmative, that is dignified, that is safe, and that's based on informed consent is really, really useful. So I'm glad to hear that you're going to be there. Yeah, I'm just glad to have as many people as we can kind of engaging with it. You had a question about, please remind me.
It was about like the cast review and are the people in the service?
Do we? Okay.
And also whether there's
the
potential
influence.
for like, shady collaboration with the NGS.
Oh yeah. Okay. I guess. I don't know if there's shady collaboration, because if there was, I wouldn't know, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's the nature of these things. When I'm doing shady collaboration, I'm not telling anybody else about it.
Of human rights.
Yeah, whoa. When I'm sneaking around in the background for human rights, I'm not telling people about it. Sorry, I'm remembering also that your question was also about like how particularly the cast review and that kind of process was like hijacked in a way by people who had a very specific set of beliefs and desired outcomes. I mean, I suppose, and related to your question about the kind of turf influence, so I suppose I have a couple of thoughts about this. One is that, like, thankfully, turf ideology has not gained supremacy here in the way that it had and has in the UK. So like we're not seeing like turf ideas coming through in the kind of way that they are in the UK. So like they're not being repeated in the way that they are in the media, and we're not seeing them kind of really embedded in the, like in this case, what are the kind of levers of power and decision making within this process, which are the professional bodies for the healthcare providers. So I hope I'm not massively naive about this, but like I don't believe that, for example, like you mentioned the psychological study, like I don't believe that there's like an embedded down like anti-trans rhetoric that is rooted in in that kind of organization in the way that it has done in the UK. So I suppose just to say that I think the context is different still here, thankfully, and I think it only stays different if we keep it like that. Yeah, so I suppose I was very conscious going into this about Cass and about the idea that Cass, part of what made the Cass review so successful for the anti-trans movement was that it had this veneer of respectability, and it's just research, and it's just science, and it's just a review, and everything should get reviewed, and it's for the best interest of the service users and all that kind of stuff. And I have absolutely no interest in being part of a project or a process that gets hijacked in that way and that uses that to limit or restrict our access to services, and access to the services that we need and we deserve. So if I felt, I suppose what I can say from my perspective is if I felt and if Tenny felt that was what was happening, we would not be part of that process. We would pull out of that process. We would not stand over or put our name anywhere near anything that I felt was going in that direction. I sincerely hope that I'm not about to be naively wrong, but I don't think that I will be. So I suppose just to kind of say that's something that I think the context is different still. And I think we are also, because Cass has happened and because we saw how that played out, it's something that we can be more prepared for here as well.
Cool. Do either of you?
First, I'd like to echo Dara's comments on Kindred in Cork. It's a bloody fantastic initiative, and even though our focus is on campaigning against the NGS, we really love to see more of that. With regards to yourself attending the Psychological Society town hall, like that's bloody brilliant. And again, I'd echo exactly what Dara says. Like they need a voice in the room that is one of them. It's not necessarily being heard as easily if it's just us campaigning, so it's great you're getting in there. And with regard to the question with regards to the neutrality of the review and the potential aspect of like turfism creeping in, I'd say, as someone who lived in the UK for 13 years, never say never. Always be on your guard with this stuff, because for a very long time we were like, it's never going to get that bad, will it? And then it did. So I'd be on the guard here. And also that is partly why in the open letter we're insisting that the NGS clinicians are not involved in the development of this new model of care, because I feel like, and we feel like, our best interests are not going to be represented by what they stand for and what they want to continue with regards to that. So I hope that answers the questions there. Anything to add?
Can I just jump in for 1 sec? We got a question through in the Instagram, like, what can we learn from what is going on in the UK? And like, it's kind of been raised, but just if you want to bear in mind that somebody's asked that, you know.
Yeah, and I'll respond to that. I think you two have done amazing in answering the other ones. I think I was watching a lot of content around the draft guidelines that was in the UK, and it is exactly as Dara said, that it is under the guise of respectability. This is a common practice. It is not going to be the snarling dog that gets you. It's going to be the polite little one. Like, it's going to be smiling while it kicks you in the throat. Like it's going, we are so, our media is so protective of a status quo, and if you can change the status quo by adapting to it, then they will accept you, and that is what the TERF movement has done in the UK, and it's under the guise of women's rights and under the guise of safety, which is a real issue that is being taken advantage of, and that is being manipulated. I think what we can learn here is that, you know, we saw it during repeal, and we saw it during marriage equality, that it was an attempt to build a broad church, and I think in ways that we are benefiting from that still, and also the continued cross solidarity work, like in for the Palestine movement. You know, we are organized people. When I have spoken to international activists, particularly about Palestine, you know, they were caught on the back foot because they didn't have the same infrastructure as we do. And I think we have to give ourselves credit on that. We are more organized than other places. And I think we have trans people in so many different areas and so many different issues. And that is our strength. And because we are in community and we recognize that we are here together, and I think we can step that up a notch. I think your influence and power is yours, and you are most powerful to do it. I think, like, in the people that are around you in your workplace, in your unions, that, like, we must continue to be agitating for this, and that putting trans stuff on the agenda as a given, because you are there and because you are entitled to it. And so I think what I would say is that we need to keep organized and stay getting organized. Also, just as one thing, after our last meeting we had an open meeting for trans intersex pride, so there was some harassment on the street by one individual was just on their way home, and so I would encourage everyone to leave here in pairs if you would talk to the person around you, just for safety. That's all.
So I just want to briefly chip into answer the person who was asking about what to do at the town hall meeting. Like, this, you could take or leave my advice, but like, my view is, don't be shy with appeals to authority, and like, because if the aim is to have this our demands coming through a different way rather than just like the trans people, the activists on the street, if you want that information presented in a different way, and in a way that like appeals to members of the Psychological Society of Ireland, be like, oh, but what about our beloved best practice guidelines? You know what I mean? But that's just me, take or leave my advice. So we're going to wrap up really soon, but just last chance. I'll take Fia and then Casey, I guess. Yeah.
Could I give you the mic there, if that's all right?
Yeah, it was just on the question of like how people can get involved broadly. I know Mike kind of alluded to it earlier about trying to get endorsements from unions and so on, raising it within your unions. But just to explain that specifically, like, we've been trying to get individuals obviously to sign on to this open letter, but then also like community organizations, LGBT groups, trade unions, any civil society organizations. Currently, I think about 40 or so organizations have signed on in some form as backing this campaign about the new model of care. But if any of you are a member of any form of community organization, whether that's like a parents group or your local pride campaign or whatever, students union, anything, like, it is really worth, like as Jenny said, pushing these trans issues within all of those spaces.
Undeniable.
Yeah, exactly. And another point just that has been raised about like how groups or other organizations, especially outside Dublin, might collaborate with Transgress. Like, just to say as well, like we have a kind of range diversity of programs, including campaigning around the public healthcare system, but then also like the other strand is supporting people to meet immediate needs around healthcare, like through providing injection supplies, access to information about GPs and that kind of stuff. And we're always looking for community groups that would be interested in collaborating on the injection supplies program in particular. We've been doing that with student unions around the country, and are working on getting it launched here in Outhouse. So if there's groups, say in Limerick, for instance, that could just have like a small supply of injection supplies that they can then distribute within their networks, that would be like really helpful and powerful. And that's an important thing in kind of normalizing self-medicating, for instance, and demystifying it, being like, this is something that we can all support each other to do safely. And then just one very quick point. I know I'm just like kind of blathering and saying things rather than asking questions, but anyway, I have the mic. Yeah, there was a point brought up, I don't think that anyone in the panel answered, about like the far right and how that might influence things going forwards, right? Because it is like all very well to sit here and talk about like these kind of technical developments of new models of care, blah, 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 whatever. Sorry, that's not to dismiss that at all, but like we all know that like that will go out the fucking window if there's some like massive far right surge, whatever. Like the first thing they're going to tear up is nice new guidelines around trans healthcare. And that is then a broader question of like balance of power, like the power of our community, and what role can we play in like fighting back against that, and that we need to be like hyper super fucking organized in order to be ready for that, but then also like to be active in all a wide variety of like social movements to undermine that growth of the far right, whether that's about housing, about Palestine, about all those other things. It's a big ask, but like there's a lot to be done. And then I'll just echo Mike's point about please take away leaflets and distribute them as widely as possible, especially outside Dublin, would be really class.
I'll take this, I'm sure it's closer. Just a couple of things came to mind. By the way, sorry, I don't know if I can. I'm Casey. I do some work with Transgress. That came to mind during a few of the points. It's sort of wide ranging, but I think with regard to the seep and the creep of far right attitudes towards trans people, I think it's definitely something that's worth being wary of. But I think at least as far as current attitudes are concerned, I watched the debate prior to the private members motion, which, look, it's non-binding, it probably won't have an effect, but what it did give was quite a clear picture, I think, of the general attitudes as they stand right now, which is that like even Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are not poisonously transphobic in the way that even UK Labour are, and I think the comparison that immediately comes to mind is that like while the UK is actively backsliding, we are in a state of just complete inertia, and I think that inertia is, you could say it's better and actively less dangerous, but it's so poisonous, and it really needs to, at some point we have to be able to pull the tablecloth off the table and actually have everything fall over, if that makes sense. As in, we've got to be able to make enough of a noise to make a change. And I don't know what the answer to that is, but and I think I would absolutely echo Fia as well, in that like we have to be prepared for a surge, because that does seem to be happening in many places. And we're not immune to that at all. The other thing was, Jenny mentioned work with trans people, and I absolutely want to echo that, but I think it brings to mind that this is an intersectional issue. It is a class issue. Right now it costs money to get trans healthcare. That is an additional cost that trans people are bearing that the general public does not. That is an essential cost, and on top of that, discrimination is a thing. I've been looking for a different job for a year, and I've failed to get one. And I've never been faced with an employer who's been directly transphobic to me, but I can put the pieces together, and I'm sure I'm not the only one experiencing that. I need money as much as any other person. We all need money to survive. So I think that call to work with trans people is super important. Hire trans people if you have the power to do that. Hire us in well-paying jobs if you have the power to do that. And especially because that the situation as it requires active resistance. You can't just say live and let live. You have to make an active move to support us. And then the other thing I think along those lines is that it has to go beyond just working with one trans person. You have to, if you want to represent trans people in your organization, in your stage, you have to represent the variety and the diversity of trans experiences, because one person can't speak for all of us. I think there's a good reason we have 4 people on stage today, like I think as a pretentious film graduate, the thing I'd think to is Emilia Perez, which is a movie which had a trans person at the center of it, who reportedly had some influence on the film, and the film was still shite. It was still really bad because that's one trans person's experience. And you end up with a film where someone has all the surgeries at once and then becomes transgender, and that's definitely how that works. So yeah.
Model of care we're fighting.
I hope that's a value, folks. Thank you for enduring my rant. All right, I'll hand over.
Yeah. Yes. Well.
Well done, Kate.
Yes. So if I could just ask our speakers to, just really briefly, if you have any last words, and then we'll wrap up. And can I just urge everyone as you're going out the door, Fia has the clipboard, and if you haven't already, please do sign the open letter. There are, like I said before, by that back window, there's a table with leaflets. Feel free to take them, give them to your friends, your family, people you don't like, anyone at all. Just get people to sign it, please. Thank you. And now, final word.
The last thing I would say is just, no one is going to give you permission to stand up for your human rights. You have to do it, and it is scary, and it is comfortable to go with a status quo, but when that status quo goes against you, you need to stand up. And this is your moment, and you must tell every single faggot, dyke and tranny that you come across that they're coming for you too, and you better get up. That's all.
As I said, I'd like to echo what Jenny has just said as well. We can't do this alone. We need to bring all of you with us to get this open letter across the line and have a better future for trans healthcare in Ireland. So thank you so much for coming tonight, but this is just the start, guys.
And I suppose I would just say that's something that I feel very conscious of as I'm doing this work, and particularly in the conversation that we're having at the moment, is how focused we are on the mechanisms of the state. And I think that we, as I said earlier, this is a really rare opportunity, and it is a wonderful opportunity to get and build something really that can work. I also think we're in a wild moment of political support through both ministers for health at the moment for improving trans healthcare for a whole range of reasons, which I think we absolutely need to grow and capitalize on and take it with both hands. But I am also, and I remain, and I think we all need to remain kind of skeptical of the state overall and the power that we invest in the state. And particularly in that comment around as we look forward into a potentially more conservative and further kind of right-leaning or far-right state apparatus, that anything that we build can and will be dismantled. And I think we need to remember that trans healthcare has never really been part of the state's healthcare system, and we've still been trans the whole time. And there are many places where trans healthcare has never been part of public healthcare, and people have still been trans, they have still transitioned, they have still accessed healthcare, and I just don't want us to lose sight of that.
Yeah.
If we get into that kind of a space, that it doesn't stop us from being trans, and it doesn't stop us from getting the things that we need and from supporting each other, and that's the real power. So, thank you.
Go in pairs.
Thought you were about to say go in peace.
God, peace be with you.
So now I can
Dismantle this. Okay, hang
Okay,
on.
so first, so we start.
Yeah.
Okay, so we end it.